And I think I'm live. So welcome to Curiosity and Command podcast, supported by Kaizen Side. In each episode, we sit down with thoughtful people to explore leadership, discipline, growth, and the ideas that shape how we live and work. Today, I'm joined by Gina Atkinson.
I'm not sure I'm thoughtful, but
You are very thoughtful. You think as you talk. That's
yeah,
how
that's the Scouse problem, I think, isn't it?
it's not a problem at all.
Trying to grab your words back.
You said in the form that I sent out that you don't often get the chance to talk about business. So I thought I'd jump straight in with a deep end and allow you to talk about military workout. How did you start?
Yeah, so many moons ago now, I got out of the military and look at what your skills are. And your skills, well, for me, it was communications or security. And both of them really, really didn't interest me. But I guess I was an expert in both of them in some respects. So then I decided to go and become a PT. I'll throw that out the window. And I was looking at business, and what I really wanted to do was my first business before military workout was Viewpoint GB. And the idea was I was going to get Americans together, get them on a bus and take them for a tour around all these beautiful parts that they never go to, like North Wales, show them amazing castles and all that sort of stuff. And I realised that I didn't actually have a clue about any of that. And while it was nice and I had my business cards and I'd done all the nice bits like studying the routes we were going to go and all that, I didn't have a clue how to get clients, didn't have a clue what I was doing in that space. So we quickly then developed to, okay, what do I know and what can I do? So having qualified as a personal trainer and seeing the rise of boot camps, BMF and stuff like that, I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. The area I was in at the time, there was no real significant boot camps. There was a couple of civvy ones, but nothing military. And I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up military workouts. Sounds really cool. No one's called that. And I'm going to buy a truck. So I spent 20 grand on a Land Rover Defender, logoed up, really cool, like really, really cool. Got the business cards again, got the flags and all that. Advertised for a week and went, yeah, I'm going to stand here and hundreds of people are going to come. And the first week, no one came. Second week, I think I got one. And it kind of dragged on like that for a long, say, a fair few months until my persistence, because I think that's the thing with a lot of us is persistence and consistency. Me standing there every day with this really smart Land Rover, fully visible of lots of people driving past. We went within probably a year from me training one person on the field in Windsor to probably a membership of like, say probably more like a year, 2 years until we got that membership. But, like classes of 40, 50 people. And it got to the point where we had to employ other personal trainers, ex-military. And it was flying high and it was brilliant. Really big part of the community. We were getting that big that other boot camps were trying to encroach in our area, all that stuff. So there was all turf war going on. So it was really good. Obviously a bit younger, and yeah, we did like 5, 6 classes a week. But the massive business model with that is I also had a friend who was a gym owner. And I'd always wanted to own a gym. It's like one of those dreams, isn't it? But their overheads were huge. Absolutely huge. And they had to get the memberships in. But us with a 50 to 70 membership with, they had me van, but that was my day car. Bought a few med balls, a few bits and bobs, nothing much because it was pure ethos was military training. So not a lot of kit. And our overheads were we had to pay park fees of like, I think at the time, 50 quid a month. So we were breaking even and probably making a better profit than someone who had a nice glitzy gym. So it was like a no-brainer. It's like I'd found a secret hack to business.
Can you talk about what it was like for you mentally going so far down the line with starting Viewpoint, then having to make a difficult decision that was not going to be a viable business, and then having to pivot, and then early stages, having it all set up, invested 20 grand, and then boom, no one turns up. Like mentally, how was that kind of journey for you back then?
Yeah, it's kind of like, you're all excited. You've got, as I say, your business card, you've got your logo. And it's really hard to design logos in those days, no chat GTP. And you got your logo, you got your t-shirts, literally got your t-shirts. And yeah, and you're just like, everyone's gonna flock. And it's kind of like, actually they're not, because this is the real world. It's you can't just put a couple of flyers up and hope for the best. The realization that the Viewpoint GB wasn't going to work came pretty quick. I had to The biggest hurdles were I was gonna have to learn to drive a minibus, although I could, but commercially. So then I was looking at, oh, what if I hire a driver, and then the costs if you hire a driver with a coach were just skyrocketing. So it just really was never financially gonna be viable, to be honest. So that was kibosh pretty quick. And I think that's the thing with it, as you say, pivot or cover and move, as we call it in Kaizen, is definitely the key to success. You've got to know when to cut your losses, because if you don't, you're gonna hang on to that dying company and it's gonna take you down with it. And I think maybe, luckily, maybe, a bit of judgment. I've always seemed to know when, you know, within business you have the development, the growth stage, and then it goes into the maturity pretty quick, and then it'll level off. And hopefully you'll always keep it level, but there's sometimes declines in businesses, and that's when you need to get off the bus and cut your losses. And it can be hard when it's your baby. You've designed that logo and you've invested in it, and you've got to go, it's not working.
Fine line, isn't it, between, like I said right at the start, that consistency and persistence of I've got to make this work, I'm going to go, and then but also not being blind to external factors that's maybe leaning towards this is no longer viable and we need to pivot or change or close or whatever. So how was the journey of military workout? How did that kind of progress as you went along? How were you recognizing the warning signs and what was working, what was not working? Were you constantly analyzing? How was it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we got the parks open, so we ended up with Windsor Park, one in Ascot, all the big hitters. One in Ascot, one in Egham, one in Staines, or St Anne's as it's supposed to have been called, but we changed it to Staines. It's called Thames on Staines now. Staines on Staines on Thames or something. Anyway, so we had
Not
we had like four or five parks going, and then we developed. We made a reps course, which was the industry governing body, if you like, and then we started training other trainers. So we ended up with, if you like, franchises, although it wasn't as dear as a franchise in like Chepstow, Hartlepool, Newcastle, and all, we were expanding. And at that point, a big boot camp that I won't mention the name of came and wanted to give some talks to us, to buy us out. And we thought, yeah, made it. They're going to buy us out. Quite happy to sell it. I'm not that precious. I can always go and make another boot camp somewhere else. And I was really, really naive. Didn't have a clue. Didn't know what an NDA meant. Didn't know what the implications. We gave the figures over. We had talks, and yeah, they basically just screwed us over and went and placed positions similar to us, but with a big, massive company. And that started to be, if you like, the decline of us, because people weren't, people were quite loyal to us because it's your personality, isn't it? But we started to lose clients, other clients go everywhere. You lose clients naturally because of injury, illness, aging out, getting bored, go and try another fitness trend like CrossFit or whatever. So that was sort of, if you like, the start of the decline of the business. We thought we'd reached the pinnacle, but instead it was like the start of the downfall, unfortunately.
How was that for you?
Yeah, it was tough. We looked at sort of whether we could sell it to some of the other trainers that lived, because it moved further away from the area as well. So it was a lot of travel. So we looked at see if we could sell it to some of our what we thought was loyal instructors, but then they ended up just going, well, we're just, if you're not going to be here, we'll just create our own boot camp. So it was kind of like, yeah, it's grown its course. It's grown its course, unfortunately, and it was really sad because some of the people who, as a personal trainer yourself, when you bring in someone who's not very fit, and we were doing it kind of en masse, not very fit, and you take them from just about being able to do a press up to the next time doing a Tough Mudder or doing a marathon, and they've gone from, couch from nothing to really, really good fitness. And they were kind of friends, you'd seen their journey. So it was sad. I've got a few friends that I still keep in touch with. One came to Everest with me, so that was nice. But yeah, I guess you've got to. There's been a long time between it, but at the time I probably would have been quite upset and bitter because it's your baby.
I feel that. I feel that sadness for what it was coming out there.
Yeah, yeah. It was, lots of work, and with boot camps, it's nice on, well, maybe not nice on days like today, but you're there every day. So I remember you used to be sat in the freezing cold, going, "Please no one turn up." And then someone would turn up, so you'd have to get out, battering down with rain, or there'd be snow, and you'd get out and you'd be like, "Hi," put your game face on. And at the end of it, like all things with exercise, at the end of that day, whether it be torrential rain or whatever, the clients would have got something out of it, and you'd have got something out of it. So it was always worth it. Just before you're like, oh,
There's so much to be said for shared suffering. I
yeah,
love it. Nothing quite like bonding you together than doing press ups in the rain.
yeah, yeah.
So what was your journey then after closing that down? Did you eventually did you make it a sale from it? What was the process then?
No, literally, it just fizzled out. Basically, the instructors that were working for us set up similar boot camps in the area. I don't think they ever kind of had the pizzazz, if you like, because that sounds really like you know big-headed, but they didn't have the same feeling, I think, because we had people that were loyal to me, and then there was people that were like, oh, I feel like, so yeah, it fizzled out. We moved on, and at the same time, I was also running another company which was called, well, it wasn't called that at the time. It was called Close Protection Angels, and that was a security company, which then eventually, after a few names changes, ended up as our ARC 24, which was an interesting one. And the reason why I ended up setting that up is because my mum's partner um, made his millions in cardboard boxes, like a really boring industry. But he'd made like, he still does it today. He's about 80 odd. And he'd be like, oh, I designed that cardboard box and stuff. And so he's like, he used to design these cardboard boxes, put them on and send them out. And they're still used today. So he made his millions in cardboard boxes, and he went, Gina, look, it's nice thinking you're going to take people up mountains or do this for whatever, but you're never going to make your money in something that is you're not an expert in. And he was like, you're an expert in security, your background, everything. He goes, why aren't you doing security? for yourself and making the money off the man instead of being paid by the man. So I took that advice, and it was probably really wise advice, and set up a security company, and for a long time didn't look back with that.
Before we go down that road, we've touched on quite a few businesses here. Was that ever the plan? Were you ever a little girl at school going, you know what, I'm gonna go into business? What gave you that entrepreneurial spirit that allowed you to run with it, do you think?
I don't know. I was never into business or business studies like that. I suppose my passions were always nature and fitness, which still are, and the army. Basically, I guess I like service, but I think within the service industry and the military and other service, like police and fire brigades, that we're very good at following process, and I think that potentially helps you within business, like that you can follow rules and structures, and also it's that ethos of, I guess, selfless commitment. But now you're doing that selfless commitment for your own aim and end. So you'll be working if you need to from 5 in the morning till 1 at night, if it's what you need to do. And we did that in the military, and now we're doing it within the business sector. And I think that's where we get the edge, because if we've got that focus, and when we get that focus, we don't let go.
Mm. Yeah, I describe it as doing the right thing, not the easy thing. And I think there's a lot to be said for people from our backgrounds that have that kind of tenacity that I will follow this structure, I'll put the structure in place, and I'll continually be on that path until we are successful, whatever that success looks like for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's lucky breaks as well, isn't there? So you can be the best business person or whatever, stood there, the best PTI, waiting for the personal trainer to, your clients to come along. But sometimes it luck does pay a little bit.
Oh yeah,
But but
you do mean
then
so.
the grind, it's the grind, isn't it? It's showing up. I think the grind over luck any day, really. Well, I wouldn't mind winning the Amaze House or, the lottery, but make it a lot easier. But yeah.
So with the benefit of hindsight, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self starting out in business, what would that be?
No, that is a really hard question. It's probably trust people less in business, because we are a very trusting people from the military, and I think that's because we probably all started as teenagers in the military, and if somebody's told you something of stature, it was, probably 98% truth, or for the good of you. Where in business, it's, as some people say, and I've been stabbed in the back before, and they go, "It's just business, and that is it." I mean, I still can't operate like that. I'm quite honest and fair, I'd like to say, and I don't think that'll change me. But I think if I trusted a few people a little lesser earlier on, then maybe things would have had a different outcome.
I'm a big believer in trusting your gut because, yeah, like you say, it's a great trait to have, to be able to trust people. But there are, unfortunately, a lot of people out there that don't have your best interests at heart. And that's a real hard thing to swallow when you find that out.
Yeah, and I think that you're right with the gut thing. I mean, when I was working in America on a certain security team, we were all kind of given, when we arrived, the gift of fear. And they said, read that. I don't know whether you've ever read it. Massive book. I'm not a reader. So I read it. I can't remember the name of the doctor. It's sold millions and millions of copies. And he talks about trust in your gut. And I think whether it be in business or whether it be where that book was coming from, which was people that had been attacked or had really bad things happen to them, always had that feeling that something was going to happen. I think the same is true in business. If you get the ick or you get like that feeling and you push past it, 9 times out of 10, whether it be 6 months down the line or 2 years, that gut instinct was probably right.
Yeah. There's millions and millions of bacteria all trying to keep their host alive. Got to listen to those little microbes when they're telling you that something's not quite right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we pivot back to ARC24. Then can you talk to us about that journey? And was there crossover between closing down Military Workout and then starting a new one? Were you having just like these ideas of, or maybe there is something to be said for this security world?
Yeah, well, at the time, I was just holding down, and this is maybe like, business people do. I was holding down like about 5 jobs. So I was doing Military Workout because that was of an evening. I was a security manager at a very big centre in London that had a lot of staff. I was also working for a little gym, and I was doing like the census, and then I was also working for another sort of fitness company. So I was doing all them. And I was also started up my security company with the idea that I was going to supply female security agents to the close protection world, which went down like a lead balloon. It just didn't really work. You got
Like
you got the
Charlie's
hate.
Angels, basically.
Yeah, which was a pretty naff word. And then the break kind of came in the festival world. So I was then still doing all these jobs, you know, and running festivals. So we got into like Glastonbury, WOMAD, like the Silverstone TT, Reading, like loads of things, supplying security stuff. And that was an interesting world, to be honest. I don't know whether I've just gone off track on what the question was, to be honest.
No, dude. Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so that was interesting. It was a bit of a cutthroat world in the fact that it was probably ran by a lot of door companies. So it was like, who's this new kid on the block type thing? We'll sort them out. Managed to did Glastonbury a few years. That's a massive operation, unbelievable, quite a big learning curve because the amount of staff we had on constantly. And then we managed to keep hold of quite a few little contracts supplying CCTV operators to a smaller, well, a CCTV company essentially. And that only went when there was a corporate takeover and they wanted a different company in. And then in between that, we got a lucky break with a shipbuilding company up in the northwest, not far from where I am now. Camel Heads, apparently it's changing its name after centuries, so it's all a big hoo-ha up here. And I got invited in to help with the developed vetting forms for all of their stuff because they ran the contracts on the MOD ships when they came in for refit and restructured and stuff. Because of my experience with the military, and it was the old days where it was paper, so everybody had to fill them out and then they'd fill it out wrong. So before it went to the MOD, we check them and then we go, no, that needs to be changed and that. So it was a foot in the door, as you say, foot in the door. And then one day I was in there with all these forms all over the place. And the MD at the time came in and was like, Gina, can you get some security guards? I was like, yeah. Still at this time, still running, still working down south. So I'm up in Liverpool, like running up and down. And I was like, yeah, of course I can. Yeah, okay. So in 2 weeks, we need you to do this. I was like, oh my God, it's all shut. How the hell do we do this? And that's where it started really, the massive rise of ARC24. And we ended up from that ship. I'm looking at it now actually, wave ruler. Straight out, I've got a painting of her. Put a team of 10 guards on there, rotating two on days, 2 on nights with shift pattern. And yeah, it just went from there. The guards that I got were as higher quality as we could. I tried to give them extra training, so they were all first aid trained. That military ethos of trying to give more than what we're getting paid for. And that held me in a good stead. Again, at the time, there was another security company had been there years, but they'd been underperforming. At one point, we ended up being the biggest because our quality of staff, which is hard when the good company trickled down. Basically, we were paying minimum wage for such a prestigious contract, and it was hard to keep them motivated, but you had to keep them motivated in other ways and stuff. We rose to, like, at one point, because they're ships, we used to ebb and flow, so they had to sail at some point, which sometimes was an interesting conversation with the security guards, because they'd be like, "Oh, you can't," like, "You knew the ship was leaving, mate." But yeah, so we ended up with like 100 plus security staff at one point with the amount of ships that we had in, Camel Aids had in. We ended up working on Boaty McBoatface, aka Sir David Attenborough. We were the security on that from literally from the first piece of metal being put down till she sailed. So that was a really, really prestigious contract, I think. And so was the MOD. The MOD one was unbelievable. We were on the destroyers, and yeah, it was full on for. We had that contract 14 years.
Wow. You talk about how you managed to expand to such a level while maintaining the quality, because I had quite a few conversations recently of people wanting to expand, wanting to get to the next level, but maybe the infrastructure wasn't there, or the quality of staff would diminish as they were scaling so quickly. Can you talk about what were the challenges there?
Yeah, so quality of staff was a problem because we were employing a lot of members of, a lot of security staff in a smaller area, Birkenhead basically, and Liverpool. And we were only paying minimum wage, and that was dictated by the contract. We couldn't do anything about that. So they were our constraints, and they were tough, to be fair, because if I could have, I would have said we needed to be paying them all £5 above the minimum wage an hour, and then we would have got, we'd have got ex-Marines, we'd have got proper, not saying the staff weren't quality, really high grade staff. So that was one of our issues. Retention was another one. And obviously, I think the way we handled it, I think, I was very hands-on boss. I might be described as a tight northerner, or I could be frugal, or a good business person, because I did everything. If I could do it, I did it. So I did all of the recruiting. I interviewed and recruited every member of staff that worked on that boat, or those boats on that contract, any contract actually, which is exhausting. Hats off to HR for having to do so many interviews, but that used to be exhausting. But I became in contact with them from the very get-go. I didn't introduce myself as the big cheese. I was just there. The bearding who interviewed me. Sometimes I'd get something and be like, okay, yeah, but that's fine, isn't it? That it You are who you are. I didn't. So from the process get go, that was on me. Um, Trying to give them quality other than money. So, like, trying to make sure I didn't give them the crappy shift, which a lot of security companies do, which is 3 days, 3 nights, 3 off, which is horrendous. It's horrendous for work-life balance. It's great for business. You make so much more money, but it's wrong. So, in my opinion. So we did the 4 on 4 off rotation. If they wanted to do only nights, they could do only nights, but it used to be 4 days, 4 off, 4 nights, 4 off. So everybody got a proper work-life balance, because nights can kill you. Actually, I'm terrible on nights. And I made sure I also got myself trained as a first aid instructor, and again to save costs because it would have cost us hundreds. And I used to go round teaching all of my staff first aid, so they all ended up with a first aid qualification, which is, you know, a bit extra because the ships, as we say, did sail, so the staff would have to go and get other stuff. You know, little things like, which might sound a bit naff, but you know, I had a member of staff that a few that stayed with me from the very get go, were on that first ship till our last ship. I think that's a testament that we must have been doing something right. You know, we used to give them like 5-year anniversary plaques of the ship. Really nice picture of the ship they first started on, brass plaque and stuff, and used to have monthly meetings. So all that, what we class as fluff, but hopefully means something to people. And my phone was like a hot phone all the time. Every member of staff had my phone number, and if they had a problem, they'd phone me. Which I guess, you know, we were £1 million turnover company, and they were still able to speak to the managing director or the CEO or whatever label they wanted to give me because I really wasn't bothered about it. Um, and maybe that's where we overcome. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had to sack people, and again, I would do that. I would quite happily do the hiring and firing because I think you've got to do the horrible stuff as well. But I'd like to think that anyone that I did fire, if they truly look inside themselves and see who it was that fired them, it would be themselves from their behaviour or their standards or whatever they did. I used to give people second chances and stuff like that if I was allowed, because it was, you know, an MOD contract at the end of the day. So yeah, say treat your staff as well as you can because they are your greatest asset.
I really want to double down into this. It's been a beautiful segue, and your leadership has come across right from the very start of taking the time to interview everyone that comes through. So you've got that relationship right from the start. Can you talk about some more of the challenges that you had and what your approach was back then? What lessons did you learn, and how has that kind of shaped your understanding of who you are as well as you've kind of gone along that?
Yeah, so I think not being a disconnected leader and being a leader within the team, which is again probably from the military. You know, you as a sergeant, you get stuck in, don't you? And all the way through, you know your team, and if you know your team properly, and you don't just know them superficially. So being at that interview, you'd get to know a little bit about the character. You know, everyone puts the game face on an interview, and I only had them for an hour, but you know a little bit about their life. They might talk about, you know, whether they've got kids, whether they've got other issues, and getting to know them from the start. You can sometimes identify that maybe they you know they've got kids, so there might be issues that they might have to get off early one day because little Johnny's gone and broken his arm in the playground. You know, or it's too hot and everybody has to get them from home. So I think it's knowing your staff as best as you can. And when it as it gets bigger, you know, it is harder. And the people who are the grey people, you know, you always tend to know the good, really good ones and the really, you know, ones that are nearly going to get sacked. And the ones in the middle, it's good to get on. And I used to do shifts as well. I didn't, you know, I wasn't undercover boss because I knew I was at that point. But I used to, you know, do 12-hour shifts. Didn't particularly like them, but up until the day we left, I had been doing shifts. I'd done shifts on Christmas Day because we had blowouts, and that was also, you know, loyalty to the customer because it was a prestigious account. We couldn't leave a ship without people on it, security. So you wouldn't found other security companies doing that. I know for a fact that the other security company that was there with us, they did it to try and keep our competition up. You wouldn't get their CEO anywhere near that site. I think you might, you know, some manager would get sent. and you'd be lucky if he stayed for the shift. So I think that was it. And maybe my staff seen that, well, you know, even though they might slag me off and so, you know, threaten to kill me or whatever, when you've sacked someone, they knew that I actually would do the job and still did the job.
How do you feel about 24 now and that super busy period there? How did you personally cope being still involved in the company, delivering your training, managing the rotas? You were things to all men.
I was ridiculously busy and probably always stressed out. Probably. I mean, I still, you know, got on the sea and had a paddle every now and again, but I'd always have to be like, oh well, in the middle of the ocean, wait a minute. But I love the hustle. I mean, it was such a prestigious account. I got to know so much about ships. We stopped so many ships sinking. Because people don't understand when ships are well, you don't understand, do you? Like, I'd be on meetings and there'd be like these amazing marine engineers and project managers, and they'd be talking, and you soak that stuff up, don't you? And I think because I was so involved, you know, our security staff were brilliant. They used to do watertight integrity patrols, which was an addition, you know, spotting leaks. And we had a couple of times where, you know, it was listing and we had to get pumps in and stuff. And that's because it was a dead ship, because it was waiting to either be basically sold or put back into service. So literally when they were dead ships, it'd just be my guys that were on these warcraft destroyers or whatever they were, which was phenomenal. So yeah, it was, I've got really fond memories of being on the ships. I miss it. As we'll probably go on to, it was devastating blow what happened, really.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, so you know how you say it's always your fault, I guess. I've looked at it, you know, extreme ownership. Maybe I should have had a few more eggs in other baskets. Which I did, but they ended up breaking just after what happened. So we going along marvellously. Nothing was going wrong on any of the contracts. We were even winning more contracts off the other security company because we were just a lot better. You know, the staff were better. They were more keen. They knew they knew they were the best on that site, without a doubt. Cavaliers had a corporate takeover, basically. The main shareholders who'd owned the company for decades sold their share to a major company, Peelport. So it's out there who bought it. It's now been sold again. And they just got rid of every subcontractor that had ever made them who they were. So I wasn't the only one in the same boat. And they were saying they didn't have enough money to pay us. At that point, they owed us £500,000. And we were a wages-based company. We weren't a product-based company, so we couldn't take any more. We'd got government loans, remortgaged the house, done everything, and been paying the wages. The staff never knew anything was happening because their wages were always in the bank on payday. And we had a Zoom call, and basically I went on a Zoom call saying, I need 100,000 to pay the staff to keep us afloat. And they went, if you're not big enough, Gina, then you need to get out. And we've decided you're not big enough. And kind of, how dare you ask for your money? And it was like, you've got 2 weeks to get off site after 14 years of dedication. And it was a bit like a loss of a death, because it meant I drove up to Camelot, told all the staff. Obviously, they all just immediately jumped over to the other company that hadn't been performing very well, but they were a bigger company, so they had a bigger pit of money. And yeah, it was over in a flash, and we were still left with the £500,000 debt with no way to pay it off. and had to unfortunately take them to court to get the money back, which was unbelievably stressful, because if we'd have gone bankrupt, when you go bankrupt, you are not allowed to, well, you don't get your money. You're bankrupt. They don't have to pay the money. So I was told, it might not be correct. And it was happening to other companies. So there was all these small local companies were under the same pressure. They weren't being paid. Peelport is massive. They said they didn't have any money. They did. They just, weren't paying us. One guy, I know, one of the managing directors, was his company. Again, it was like a small company. Local people were employed by it. He had a heart attack from the stress. They owed him £1 million, I believe. So people were starting to leave. And it was kind of, if you leave, that's you gone, and we'll get these big hitters, it wasn't G4S, but we'll get like G4S in, or for the security, we'll get Biffa Bins in instead of the local one. I mean, I'm making them up, so don't sue me on the names. And they got all these big corporations in to replace the smaller businesses. So it wasn't just me that was in that. There was a lot of people lost their businesses, had to sue the company to get the money out. And I believe everybody got paid eventually, but it wasn't without losing their companies, losing a lot of, one guy ended up in hospital from it. And it was a horrendous time. And I guess the only solace is I wasn't picked out. It wasn't me. It was just I didn't have big enough pockets. I mean, if I'd had maybe £1 million spare cash, I could have rode it out maybe. But then, I wouldn't be the same company that provided that service, I think. So it was very bitter, I'd say. And I still don't particularly drive past the yard with that fond of memories, because I felt like everything was ripped away without justification. But as you say, that's business.
Doesn't have to be, but is often the case. It must have been really difficult not to internalize that. How did you come to terms with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a traumatic time in my life anyway, with other things going on in the background. So it was just like another death. I felt like it just kept having like a baseball bat to the back of my head. It just kept coming. And then from that, we had a few little contracts around Liverpool, and the knives were out. They found out we were losing that contract, and then basically the bigger companies went in and sucked up all our other little contracts. So, it was kind of like, oh, well, at least we've still got 10 guards dotted around doing that. And it was just like, yeah, it was just like, we were getting scalped from every way we looked at the time. So yeah, and it was a sad end, because there was no, didn't see it coming, nothing we did wrong. It was just the fact that corporate takeover, I guess, swallows up small companies and introduces these big corporates, which is sad. And it's happened again. Peelport's now sold it to something marine, and they've changed the name and to something Birkenhead. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, I guess it's progression. I guess in hindsight, if I try and give it a positive spin, I can say it released me, gave me a lot more freedom to do other things. A lot less money, but a lot more freedom, and a lot less stress. Although I probably do have my phone glued to my head, it's in different things. It's out doing charity work or other bits and bobs.
In that vein of extracting the positives from it, those kind of hard fought lessons, however devastating they are to go through, there is usually a large list of things that you do learn from it, even if it's how not to operate. So in that vein, what do you wish you'd have done differently that you now have warning signs for, or what's the lessons that you can extract from that time period that has shaped who you are today?
I guess it might be that trust thing again, because we were asking for our money don't get me wrong, we were asking for our money all the time because it was overdue. But I think maybe throwing in, we're taking you to court earlier, because I don't think the outcome would have been any different. But then that's what hindsight's about, isn't it?
So it's that early recognition that the tide is starting to turn
Yeah.
and being decisive amid uncertainty at that point.
Yeah, and being swallowed up, I guess. I guess if we'd have done a preemptive strike 6 months earlier, we could have tried to sell because we had all the contracts. So we could have tried to sell, I guess. But you're just so in it. You don't see it, and you've been with a company and trusted them for so long. And a couple of head sheds had changed, but not the ones you were directly dealing with. So you just didn't think, you just didn't really see it coming. I don't think a lot of us did, really. But in hindsight, 6 months earlier, sold the company, would have been jobs are good, and you know. That's why hindsight's hindsight, I guess.
And so it's 2020.
Hmm.
I want to be respectful of your time, and we've covered so much and not even scratched the surface of all the notes that I've written. Before we do go, and if you would like to, I'd love to get you on another one. We talk about some of the fundraising that you've done and the bits involved that you're involved with now. But before we do go, can you just talk about the lessons that you learn about dealing with your own stresses and the pressure that comes with running a business at that scale, and what are the lessons that you learned from that period now that you can live by so that you don't necessarily feel that pressure so strongly like you did back then?
Yeah, I think you've got to always try and set that bit aside of the time for yourself, whether it's going for a walk for an hour, around your local park or something. It just can reset you and de-stress you, and maybe try and go without your phone, or at least put it on silence. Is probably the biggest thing, really, because we do get hyper focused and into what you're doing. And I get it, because you're passionate about your business. You want to build a better life for you, your family, whatever your dream is, and you get into that. But it's not worth it if you haven't got your health. And I guess nutrition's probably a good one, because yeah, you when you're working so hard, nutrition and fitness is something that falls to the wayside. Instead of making yourself a healthy dinner, you'll just go and grab a burger because it takes 10 minutes. But then to chop a salad probably takes 10 minutes, but doesn't seem as good.
I think that's an excellent place to pause it there. And that's really resonated with me, of just because it's easy doesn't mean you should. And as soon as your health deteriorates, it's the only priority, isn't it? And that should be the one thing you do protect. It sounds selfish to look after number one, but it's not. It's selfless.
Yeah, because, as they say, you can't fight another battle if you're the casualty.
You know.
Yeah. But yeah, look after yourself. Trust no one.
And on that bombshell, Gina, this has been fantastic. I knew it would be. And just on a personal level, thank you for everything that you've done with us setting up Kaizen and building it to what it is now and is going to be in the future. And the lessons that you've learned over your career is definitely something that I'm leaning heavily into. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been brilliant, and so thinking back of what we spoke about, our ethos from Kaizen, our 6 principles are definitely in what we both speak about and are quite passionate about. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next chapter with Kaizen, that's for sure.
Who knows? As long as we trust each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you can trust the people yeah, we can trust each other, I reckon.
It's knowing who to, and that's a
Yeah.
skill.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we all knew that, we'd be golden, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that is a golden egg.
Yeah.
Gina, thank you very much. It's been amazing, and thank you very much for your time. And let's do it again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.